There's speculation that he was killed. He was murdered.
Well, she didn't know, and she didn't know because the Army lied to her. It took them 35 days from the time Pat died. It took the Army 35 days to tell the family, to include the brother who was in the platoon,
35 fucking
that
days.
Pat was killed by friendly fire. And so when she found out, that Pat, it took 35 days to tell that. The original story, which was embedded and told via the Silver Star narrative, was he was shot while charging uphill to counter an ambush. That's what his Silver Star read. So, once her quote was something to the effect of, if that's the way he really died, why would you make up such a massive lie to cover it up? And, that's what happens too, is, once you're lied to, lied once, then lied twice, and still no truth, you don't believe anything you're told. And I think that's the mode that the rest of the family was in, and quite frankly, a lot of people who looked at it and still look at it.
This is why the entire U.S. government and every fucking institution inside of it is in the position that it's in right fucking now.
Yeah, you're right. The credibility, lack of consistency, lack of telling the truth. And, in this case, there was no reason for it except the same old thing: pride, careerism, covering up, something that was very embarrassing. But, I went into it with eyes wide open. I told her, hey, I'd be happy to take a look, but I just want to tell you right now, because I didn't believe he was murdered right off the bat. And so I just said, I just want to be frank with you. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think after I read this, and it may not be what you want to hear. And she said, I'm fine with that. I just want to hear what you think and what we can do to prevent it from happening again. So, I was super busy at the time. I just opened a new business. I was trying to finish my second book, which was a complex book, The Common Sense Way. But, I did what anyone would do when a Gold Star mom asks him for help. And that's, you got it. I'm in. And I started working on, basically the research for that. I did not initially think I was going to write it into a book. I just decided that at some point a few months in, because I realized the same thing. The only way to get the truth out is to put it on paper so people can read it and memorialize it. So, I started right away. The first thing I did was talk to some old Rangers, who, not old, but Rangers I knew when I was in the regiment. And I served in 2nd Ranger Battalion twice. As I told you, I was a lieutenant. I went back once from the unit for 18 months to be the S3 of 275. So I went back as a major for 18 months. A mentor of mine who told me, hey, I know you love it at the unit, but in the same way you join the military to pay something back, you ought to go do some time in the regiment and pay something back to them, share some of the knowledge you learned in the unit. And I like that. And I loved Fort Lewis. I'm not pretending it was some massive sacrifice. And I loved every minute of being back in the Rangers. Same thing. I had a great battalion commander while I was there, a great bunch of captains, NCOs. So, I knew 275 very well. Many of those NCOs who I knew even as lieutenant were now first sergeants, sergeant majors. So I knew a lot of guys in the battalion still when I started working on it. And, right off the bat, I just started calling up Rangers, getting Rangers to give me other Rangers numbers, guys who were involved, and started talking to them. Here's the thing. This other route, the route 01 just went on, is not only faster than that route, it's way safer. There's no hills. It's like an open highway. We'll get there faster and we'll get there safer. Platoon sergeant, okay, let's go. But before he goes, he gets on the radio and tries to call the platoon leader and tell him, hey, we're changing direction. We're coming in behind you. no comms. He tries and tries on line of sight. Then he gets on SATCOM. That doesn't work. Then he gets on the SATCOM again, and it's 6 o'clock. So the biggest VTC of the day is at 6 o'clock. He calls back to the CFT, the battalion headquarters. He's doing the right thing. He's calling back to get them to bridge comms. So when you can't make comms with an adjoining unit, you call higher so that higher can call relay between the two units and then stay there as long as needed to make sure that you're passing.
Conflict.
Right. But there's no answer from battalion. So he starts driving. And now, if you read the statements, there are some senior guys in Serial 2, and Kevin Tillman, Pat's brother's in Serial 2, Pat's in Serial 1. And everyone said the same thing. We had no idea we were driving that Serial 1 was anywhere near us, much less right in front of us. And Serial 1, the guys in Serial 1 said, we had no idea where Serial 2 was, much less did we think they were right behind us. But they're behind them now, like about 10 minutes because they've stopped. So Serial 2 turns around. So they tell the Jenga that's okay. Jenga now pulls out into the lead. Now you're getting into the 7 mistakes before a catastrophe. And they know it's only 3.2 kilometers. They can see on the map, but he's out in front. The road's narrow enough just to change that position. It's going to take 1.5 kilometers to find the right spot. So he leads the Jenga truck. There's 2 Ranger NCOs sitting in the front seat with them. They pull into the slot canyon. Same comments. I got a bad feeling about this. But they really have a bad feeling because all the platoon Humvees are behind the Jenga truck now, and he's moving at about 1 mile an hour. So I mentioned the geometric boulders. Not only do you have to zigzag to follow the creek, but you have to zigzag within the zigzags because the boulders don't let you go, cross at the spot you want to cross the creek or move up the little sand dune that you want to use to get to the next spot. So it's almost impossible driving. How this Jenga truck got himself in the Humvee even 100 meters in is amazing, much less the whole canyon. But about 100 meters in, 2 explosions. Some guys think they were RPGs. Other guys said they were mortar rounds. They blew up on the canyon wall to the west of them where the sun's going down. A massive boulder gets loose, comes crashing down the size of, like an F-150, goes right between 2 vehicles. Everyone's watching it. Luck would have it. They do the right thing. They get out of their vehicles because they weren't sure if it was an IED or someone shot something at them. And then the RPK machine guns open up from up on top on the ridge. The Rangers return fire. And only Rangers can do, they've got a lot of firepower. They've got Mark 19s, 50 cals. They've got AT4s, mortars, and they just start opening up. It's actually the right thing to do. They took some criticism for this, but to suppress the enemy, you got to blanket them, drown them in shrapnel. And, rounds flying over their head to keep their heads down. So your first recourse when you drive into an ambush is to drive out, but they can't drive out because the Jenga's in the lead. He ain't even in the vehicle. He's scared shitless hiding behind a rock. And at first, some of the guys thought, hey, he's in cahoots with the bad guys. They set us up at this last town. He wasn't. He was just scared shitless, and he's in the middle of a firefight. So they force him back in the vehicle, get moving again. And, if it wasn't so deadly, it's farcical. They're moving through. It's like a Monty Python thing. You're moving through an ambush at 1 mile an hour, stacked up, 4 vehicles behind a Jenga truck and a towed vehicle. The Jenga truck stops again in the middle of the slot canyon. They get out. Heated discussion happens. One of the squad leaders, gets in what was called almost a fight with them, smashes his window. The driver goes, berserk, but he gets back in the vehicle and starts driving again.
Hi, I'm Sarah Adams, the host of Vigilance Elite's The Watch Floor, where we highlight what matters. It became a permissive state, explain to you why it matters, and then aim to leave you feeling better informed than you were before you hit play. Terrorists, hostile intelligence agencies, organized crime, not everything is urgent. But this show will focus on what is need to know, not just what is nice to know.
Finally, they come to the end of the canyon, and the canyon opens up. The Jenga truck can move over and let the Humvees go by. They've been now firing for 12 to 14 minutes. So we talked about making sense, how important it is in combat. And one of the definitions of making sense is the only way to make sense is with your senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. So when you lose any sense, you're losing a major ability to make sense of what's going on around you, especially sight and sound. But if you expose the human ear to a decibel level of 130 decibels or more for over 30 seconds, temporary deafness sets in. And temporary deafness is a variable thing. It can go anywhere from minutes to hours to days. The lowest decibel weapon they were firing was the M4 at 150 decibels. Almost none of them had earplugs on because they're not a mech unit. They don't drive around. They should have been driving with Peltors on, but they didn't have Peltors. Only the mortar guys did. But they didn't even have earplugs on. So 12 to 14 minutes, they were exposed to machine gun, mortar, and rocket fire, at the 150 decibel range. Almost the entire platoon is now deaf. And it's in every statement. My squad leader had to get up and yell in my face, and still I couldn't hear him. I could just read his lips. So they're now seriously handicapped because they can't hear. The light's also going down. Now, before we come out of the canyon, let's go back to Serial 1. Serial 1 pulled in to Mana, which is they're about to drive up toward Mana. Serial 2. They got out to do a map check, and just as they got out to do the map check, they heard the boom, boom, and they could tell it came from back in the Slot Canyon. They got on the radio, still no comms, no one to talk to, so the decision was made, let's get up to the high ground, see if we can overwatch the position, provide suppressive fire, and or kill the enemy. So the squad leader and the platoon leader have a hunch that it's the rest of the platoon behind them. The rest of the platoon has no idea. They just think, we're going up to shoot the enemy. So up they go. They leave the vehicles and all their crew serve weapons. A couple of guys stay with the vehicles, and the rest of them run up, 11 guys, up this incredibly difficult slope up to what's the terrain feature is a spur, which sticks out from a ridge like a tongue. And they occupy this spur thinking, here's where we'll be able to get comms and provide fire support. They try the comms, still no joy on the comms. So that's out. Fire support, there's still a whole nother ridge between them and the canyon, so they can't see into the canyon. But they can see down right to where the canyon opens up, where Serial 2 is about to come out. Now, as soon as they get up there, they come under fire from the high ground. So 6 guys in Serial 1 said they saw enemy up in the high ground to the west. They don't know, though, that Serial 2 is shooting at that same enemy. So you can kind of extrapolate that rounds are bouncing off rocks, looking like even more fire. These guys said they saw guys up there. Pat Tillman, who I should go back when they said split the platoon, something happened that is violates a major part of any fighting element strength. Everyone was in a position based on where their squad leader, team leader was, and then how they sat in the vehicle was based on that same organic relationship. You always want to be with your fire team, your squad, whatever. When they split the platoon, because they were told, don't just split it, here's how to split it. Send 2 mortars, send 2 snipers, send these guys.
Shit, they
so
fucking broke it all up.
Broke the organic relationship of the platoon apart.
They micromanaged it all the way to that.
So now Pat's with a squad he's never worked with before. He's a team leader of 1. The other team is in the other serial. The squad, no one tasked the squad with, hey, Pat's attached to you. So same thing in serial 2. You got guys in vehicles. In the lead vehicle, which has the most firepower, is the weapons squad. But this weapons squad leader is not in the front seat. One of the rifle squad leaders is. And so where does that matter? Unless you've gone over all your hand and arm signals for fire, what direction, ceasefire, you got no way to control those guns when you're driving and, the guys are in the back. So the organic nature of the platoon's been broken apart. Pat gets up to the top of the spur. The squad that he followed up there, did their immediate action, laid out beautiful linear formation, military crest of the ridge. Pat, there's no more room. So Pat goes, hey, how about I take me and my guys down by those 2 boulders right there. And they're about 20 meters lower on the east side of this finger. He means 2 guys because he's got 1 Ranger private, that guy's really attached to him, and 1 Afghan. So these Afghans came with him from border crossing point 5, and one of them decided to follow Pat Tillman up the mountain. So he's now with them. This is not a great position. It could have been sufficient, but they weren't good boulders. They didn't provide full protection for the most likely spot you'd be shot at, which is right down on the canyon road. But they get down into that position, and so they're set. And just to give you an idea, so a spur is like this. It's like a tongue. Pat's down here. The squad's up like this. The canyon comes out right like this. So the rest of the platoon is behind this ridge, but they're about to come out in the canyon right in front of them. And, you can hear them because you can still hear them shooting. And to Pat and the private, they're new guys. And one of the things I cover in the book is that, friendly fire is a constant. As you read, I've been to combat in Panama, Colombia, Somalia, Bosnia, Afghanistan, Iraq, and I've experienced friendly fire in Panama, Colombia, Somalia, Bosnia, Afghanistan, Iraq. Friendly fire and experience in combat go hand in hand. It just tells you friendly fire is a reality of combat. So what does that mean? That you just shrug your shoulder and go, no, it means you're always expecting friendly fire. Your brain's always extrapolating. Well, if he goes over there, these guys could be shooting at us. It becomes second nature and you expect it. For new guys, that's not going to be in their, locus of experience. They're not going to go, if that might be second platoon coming around. They're not alerting themselves, hey, they're not going to know we're up here. We didn't tell them we're up here. They're going to start shooting at us. And remember, Pat's squad leader, who is a fairly experienced guy, he's down riding in the Jenga truck. So if he was up there with them, I know, because I talked to him, he would have done what I would have done if I was there. And it would have been, guys, get up, get out of here, get back behind the military crest of the spur. This is totally exposed. When they come around that corner, they have no idea we're up here. They're going to be shooting. And that's pretty much what happened.
Fuck, man.
Within a couple of minutes, out they come around the corner. The lead gun jeep has a 50 cal, a saw, 203, two saws and a 203, I think. And they're firing full up because when they come around the bend, the Afghan who doesn't speak English will not get down. Pat and the Ranger Private are trying to tell him, dude, get over here, down, but he's not getting down. Whatever reason, language, how he didn't understand. There were 203 rounds landing like 50 meters away. So
Froze.
he
Probably fucking froze.
yeah, whatever, but he's firing his AK too, like from the hip. He's firing up at where they had seen enemy across the road to the south. So Serial 2 comes around this bend, blind. First thing they see is a guy with a beard in these weird khaki camos, AK-47 firing away. The squad leader, who's now pretty much in reptilian brain mode after 12 minutes of firing and fighting with the truck driver. He just puts his M4 up to his eye, looks through his ACOG sight, drops him, fires 7 shots, hits him. The guy was hit at least seven times. So shot him, at about 50 to 75 yards, dropped him. When a machine gunner does not get a verbal command, they're trained to shoot where their squad leader shoots. So this is a squad leader who hasn't been working with them. He just shot at the Afghan. So all the machine guns swing around, including the 50 cal, and start firing right at that Afghan. 10 meters behind the Afghan is Pat and the private behind these insufficient boulders, especially for Pat's hulking muscular frame. So they begin opening up, and it's a hail of fire. These guys are on their back, and suddenly the firing stops. So Pat and the private think the Afghan's down, but they don't know that yet because they didn't see him drop. But Pat and the private think, they figured it out. So again, what really happened was these guys came to a corner. There's a rock wall down there that fences, made of rocks, that fences this marijuana and poppy patch that's growing by the creek. To get around it, they had to make a right turn, but to make that right turn, there was a depression. So the Humvee sunk into the depression and the guns wouldn't elevate over the rock wall. So they paused their firing until they came back out of that depression. Pat and the Ranger Private thought, hey, they must have figured it out. They stand up, start waving their arms, going, hey, it's us, it's friendly. And Pat's like, it's me, Pat Tillman, Rangers. Well, they also don't know they're deaf. And they're even deafer now because they've been firing 50 cals right next to their already, damaged eardrums. They get back down again. Somehow they survive the return fire. He's like, what the fuck? And the Ranger Private, who, is a great guy. He stayed in the Army the whole time after this, became a sergeant major, passed on Pat's legacy to every soldier he taught throughout his career. But he's a brand new guy, months in the Army. He knows nothing. He starts praying. Pat tells him, hey man, now's not the time to pray. We got to pay attention to what's out there. And if you pay attention to it, you'll save your life. And the Ranger Private writes, and he was right, because by refocusing my brain on where they were shooting from, I was able to inch my body around with the boulder to get the max cover out of it and avoid getting hit. But right when he did that, Pat said, I got an idea on how to stop this. Pat had a smoke grenade. And he got up to his knees to throw that smoke grenade. And this was probably the last couple hundred rounds shot by this lead vehicle. They were about to be, again, occluded by terrain. And the saw gunner had swung around, and the saw gunner saw him come up and hit him with three rounds right in the head and killed him. Pat went down the platoon, the privates screaming. Finally, these guys see there's a bunch of Rangers up there. Ranger, it's getting dark. Serial 2 comes riding in. They're like, what the fuck happened? The guy, the platoon sergeant, there's actually the new regimental sergeant major, great guy, are in the rear vehicle. They come up, what happened? Because no one knows. And now word comes, hey, we've got an Eagle KIA up here. And what's his initials? PT. And the whole platoon, but Kevin Tillman, the squad leaders and platoon sergeant hear that. They know Pat's dead. Devastation falls upon the platoon. Some of the guys, broke into tears up when they saw his body. One of the conspiracy theories that he was killed was that he was killed by the platoon, and I can vouch for the platoon. They revered him, not because he was a football player, but because he was a great guy. And he was this guy who sacrificed to do exactly what they did. These kids from small towns across America who didn't have nothing but a high school job, like we talked about earlier. And here's this guy who's doing the same thing as them for the same reasons, but he gave up a $2.2 million contract and a career in the NFL. And he was just a great guy. You can read all the independent statements, even squad leaders who normally in the Rangers, don't interact a lot with junior guys. They loved talking to him because he made everyone feel like they were being listened to. And he was a great conversationalist, asked great questions, super intelligent, but just a good person. And so the platoon is devastated. The platoon sergeant comes up, starts piecing things together. He finds the platoon leader who was from Serial 1. He's injured. He was hit by a mortar round or a 203 round that was fired by Serial 2 and hit him in his RTO. He's bleeding, going into shock. So they got to get him medevaced. They got to secure the perimeter because there's still enemy out there. So this chaos, and it's dark, it's getting dark, and no one knows where anybody else is. They're spread out. This is sheer, utter chaos. And they did it. They called in a medevaced Pat's body, the Afghan's body, and medevaced the platoon leader, his RTO. Both were hit. The RTO was shot in the knee, again, by the first vehicle. They confused them too. They saw them, shot them also. And Kevin Tillman went along because it's his brother, and he was despondent once he found out that it was Pat.
Fuck, man.
Yeah, so they have a memorial service back at Kaust, at the airfield there in Kaust, which is, the base. Memorial service for Pat. At the end of memorial service, his body's going to be flown to Bagram first and then off to Germany and back to the U.S. And Kevin is going to go with the body, accompany the body all the way, back home. So before that morning, I should say, so this is 2 days after. The next morning, the battalion commander shows up and they do an investigation. He walks up to the site where Pat was killed, asks the first sergeant, what do you think happened? He said, sir, I'm pulling 50 cal rounds out of the rock Pat was behind. This was friendly fire. By 12 noon, every guy in the platoon who was still out knew Pat was killed by friendly fire. The battalion commander knew he was killed. The battalion commander in his statement said, I called the regimental commander at 12 noon and told him Pat was killed by friendly fire. So anything you hear now when we go to the 35 days, just remember that these guys knew it was friendly fire. So now the next day is the memorial service, and they're going to put Pat's body and Kevin onto this Chinook. Before they get on, the body's loaded. The battalion commander and the S3 pull Kevin Tillman aside and give him their condolences and say, look, we just want to let you know we're going to find these guys, and when we find them, there's going to be hell to be paid. They knew he was killed, but they had been told by the regimental commander, keep this under under your hat. We got to do an investigation before we say anything. But this is a member of the platoon. So he's both a brother in arms and a brother in blood. He, of all people, knows how chaotic it was. He was in Serial 2. His gun had its buttstock torn off by one of the canyon walls. His Mark 19, thank goodness, jammed. If he had opened up with that Mark 19, he probably would have killed multiple guys in Serial 1. So he's in the back of for the ambush, 12 to 14 minutes, he's got a 9mm. He fired 8 rounds out of his 9mm in that canyon. So of all the people who knew how chaotic it was, Kevin Tillman knew how chaotic it was, knew how difficult it was to identify the enemy, knew the volume of fire they were up against, knew that you couldn't see anything, knew they were following a senseless order, but they don't tell him. So Kevin gets on that helicopter, flies to Bagram, still doesn't know, but he's going, why isn't anyone talking to me? And he tries calling the Ranger Private who was next to Pat when he died. He demands they put him on the red phone from Bagram. They put him on the red phone, and the battalion commander tells him, you say anything, you're going to pay the price for it. So they make him...
To his fucking brother?
Yep, they make him lie to the brother, not be truthful. He did whatever I don't know. And, him and Kevin get along great. Kevin now knows he was coerced into doing that. And again, if you freeze the moment in time...
fucking shit.
And think of what these guys did by not telling Kevin. When Kevin landed in Bagram, he went right to a phone, a secure phone, called his mom and Pat's wife, Marie, and gave them the bad news. And he did it in the way that there's no sugarcoating it. Mom, Pat was killed in one of the most chaotic ambushes I've ever seen today. I'm flying home with the body. Mother devastated, wife devastated. There's no sugarcoating telling family members that their loved one's been killed in action. But you can only make it 1,000 times worse by not telling them the truth about how he killed, especially when the truth about how he killed is friendly fire, and you're telling him he's killed in an ambush. So for the next 35 days, I'm not inside this chain of command's head, but somehow they're, no, hold it off. To just be completely objective and fair, for 48 to 72 hours, they could have said, we don't know for sure. I would have told Kevin everything I know. Kevin, we don't know exactly the bullets that killed Pat, whether they came from friendly or enemy. They didn't know that, and they could have still come from enemy. But what we do know is the guy who was laying next to him, the Ranger Private, who's still alive, is telling anyone who wants to hear that Pat was killed by friendly fire. They came under fire from the lead gun jeep, and he believes he was killed by friendly fire. I want to tell you, we're going to continue the investigation. They're doing an autopsy at Bagram before they ship the body. As soon as I get a definitive cause and what killed him from the autopsy, you'll know everything I know. And if you need anything in the meantime, the battalion is at your service. That's what I would have told him. Instead of, let us know if you need anything, we'll get these guys, and off they went. But Kevin would have told the mom and Marie right there, not just that he was dead, but he was killed by friendly fire. And the whole thing that went on for basically 20 years would have been nipped right there with just the truth. So, the old adage, the truth doesn't get any better with age. Bad news doesn't get any better with age is, on steroids here. But they're aging it, and they're aging it 35 days. A memorial ceremony in San Jose where they read this Silver Star citation, charging up a hill to counterattack an enemy that ambushed his comrades.
No matter where you're watching the Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this at all, anything, please like, comment, and subscribe. And most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, head to Apple Podcasts and Spotify and leave us a review.